Okay, good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, July 6th, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, jump right into roll call. Commissioner Bowie is absent. Commissioner Ingert?
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner?
Present.
Vice Chair Fizer?
Present.
Commissioner Manser?
Present.
Secretary Peterman?
Present.
Commissioner Urquilla?
Present.
Mayor Turnbow?
Present.
And Chairman Wiggins is here tonight. We have no personal appearances on the agenda tonight, so we will jump directly into our consent agenda. We have two items: the approval of minutes from our June 15th, 2021 meeting, as well as a case 21020 Brookside replat, final plat. I would entertain a motion to dispose of these items.
Mr.
Please.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Faulkner.
I move that we accept consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, a second by Commissioner Urquilla to accept the consent agenda. Any discussion of the items? Very good. All those in favor? Seeing all hands up, none opposed, no abstentions. That will pass. I believe we have 8 tonight, 8-0. Great, moving right along. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we will move into our new business this evening. The first item, we have 3 items tonight. Our first item is case 21019, the Culver's Site Plan Amendment. And for that, I would ask the applicant to please come forward and present your case. Please state your name and address for the record too, please.
Sure. Evening, Matt Slish with Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. So we're here on behalf of Culver's this evening. What we're wanting to do is a slight site modification to add a double drive-through to the south side of that site. So if you've been out there and seen it, that's the exact location where the current drive-through sets. What we're planning to do is just modify, add an island on the interior of the parking area, basically reduce the parking. I think we took out 8 parking spaces total, but we added back a couple on the south side to just provide a little better access to the site and improve the quality of the restaurant. So we're here for any questions you might have.
Very good, thank you. I will turn it over to staff for their staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. As Mr. Slick indicated, the specific request tonight is an amendment to the approved site plan for the Culver's Restaurant. Again, they are adding a second drive-through lane, as well as making some changes to the traffic flow pattern at the southwest corner of the site to improve the queuing lanes for the drive-through. The property is part of a commercial plan unit development district. The initial site plan was approved back in 2009, and the building opened in November of 2009. Engineering Division did review the modifications. Of course, they're all interior to the site, no public infrastructures affected, and so they did recommend approval. A restaurant with drive-through facilities does have to meet the special use conditions. We do have stacking requirements at the menu boards for fast food restaurants. The requirement is to have 4 stacking spaces for each menu board, and it does include the vehicle that's actually at the menu board. The proposed amendments to the drive-through lanes do meet those requirements. As was discussed, there is a reduction in some parking spaces. Total overall, they'll have 97 spaces available, and 4 of those spaces are ADA compliant spaces, which does far exceed the code requirement of parking spaces. So they are well in excess, almost twice as many spaces as what the code, more than twice the number of spaces code requires. Again, site access to the facility is not changing. There is one internal access driveway that's being closed. Again, it's to help to have better queue lanes for the drive-through menu boards. Staff submitted proposed findings of fact for this site plan amendment, and the staff does recommend that the commission accept those findings and approve the Culver's site plan amendment. We do recommend the 7 conditions. These are the standard conditions we have on site plan approval, so nothing unusual with the conditions this evening. And I believe that would conclude staff report at this time.
Thank you, sir. At this point, we would open discussion for members of the commission for either the applicant or staff.
Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Arkia.
for staff, you mentioned 97 spaces, but I believe they were adding 3 more back in. So is it 97 total or 100?
It's 97 total. Once they're taking some away, they're adding the 3. So overall, they will end up with 97 spaces. The staff report may have said 96 and the 488 spaces, but my initial review, when I looked at it, I didn't see 3 spaces that they were actually removing. So when I did a recount this afternoon, they're actually ending up with a total of 97 spaces.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chairman Faulkner, or Chairman, former Chairman,
Former, thank you.
Commissioner Faulkner. I'll get it right one day.
Just a little detail in the staff report as it goes forward. Well, I guess it doesn't go forward, but for the record, page 2, existing surrounding uses on the east, it says zoning is PUD and C33. Should just be C3, correct?
Where do you see that, Chairman?
Toward the bottom of page 2, existing surrounding uses east is.
Yes. Yeah,
Yep, just for the record.
yeah, we will correct that. It should just be the C3. You are correct.
Not a biggie, thank you.
Forever the eagle eyes. Any additional comments, questions, or would entertain a motion to dispose or discuss this further?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Faulkner.
I move that Planning and Zoning Commission accept staff proposed findings of fact on case 21019, Culver's site plan amendment, and approve the case subject to the following conditions, and I don't believe I need to read all of those, but just for the record, I see 7 conditions in staff report.
I'll second.
Very good. I have a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, second by Commissioner Urquia, to accept the staff findings of fact and forward case 21019 for approval. I'm sorry, yep, it's not a forward. Sorry. Accept the findings of fact of case 21019 and approve for approval subject to the 7 conditions outlined by staff. Thumbs up from Mr. Zur. All those in favor? Once again, seeing all 8 hands, 8-0 passes. That'll move us into our second item under new business, case 21014, the South Metro Fire Department Administrative Building Site Plan. And I would ask the applicant to please come forward and present your case.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, they
Yes.
do have a presentation to make. I would like to broadcast that to you so you don't have to turn around and look at the big screen.
Perfect.
And I'll give you back control once the presentation's done.
Thank you, Mr. Catteritt.
Hello. For the record, my name is Catherine Waldrop with Hafer Welker Architects. Address 11460 Tomahawk Creek Parkway, Suite 400, Leawood, Kansas 66211. On behalf of the South Metro Fire Department District, as well as our firm, we'd like to thank all of you for your service. So we'll start there. So thank you. So today we're just going to give you a brief overview of the new administration building, which is just to the east of us, just behind the fire training tower, again to the east of us. So this building sits on about a 1.1 acre site, oriented east-west. There's an access drive that connects to the existing Fire Station 1, as well as the training center, as I spoke about earlier. It's about 5,000 square feet. A single-story building is what they're after here. So here illustrated on the site plan is our landscaping, which includes some of the modifications from your comments. So we appreciate that. We'll point specifically to the east side of the property where we have those 10 large junipers that will be the type A landscape screen from the duplex properties to the east. On the site plan, you also see the 15 stalls and the one ADA van accessible stall, which will be a part of the project. From there to the west, you'll see an outdoor area with some beautiful flowering trees, and to the east as well, where the employee entrance is, some more of those flowering trees. Really nicely landscaped, not only from the road, but also on the property itself. See if I can get this thing to go here. Am I hitting the right one for information? If not, you can just advance it for me if you don't mind. No, you're good. So what you see here is the front entrance. Sorry, it's a little dark on the screen, but hopefully you guys can see it. So that would be where you would go and visit the Fire Administration District here moving forward. You'll see cast stone, brick, high energy insulated glazing on this building. The facade is very durable and will last forever. That's the intention of the building. The roof is shingled. That's a requirement or a desire of the owner. For maintenance moving forward. You'll see a nice plaza area in the front and the flagpole to the west. Can advance, if you don't mind. So here, this is just your view from Conway. So we do have a monument sign on the property just to signify, what's there off of Conway. So another one, perfect. That outdoor plaza area that I spoke about, this is for employee welfare, just outside of the break room area. Something really nice to relax on the nice days on the shoulder seasons here in the metro. Some interior images just to orient you to the space, that lobby in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. That's how you would come in and be welcome. Their large display case to say hello and see all the good things that the fire department does here. Lower left is the conference room. Again, if you ever came in for a meeting, that's where you would sit. Bottom right is the kind of reception area. In order to keep things, a little semi-secure, because we've got some HR considerations and other things, of course, that went into the design. There's kind of a secondary lobby space there in the reception area. And lastly, that break room I spoke about, so that they can take their lunch in peace and step away from their desk, hopefully. So, next. The only thing that we wanted to speak to you guys today about specifically, and we brought some samples if you want to touch and feel, but the trash enclosure is currently proposed as a concrete masonry architectural cast stone split-faced unit, which looks very, very similar, but is much more durable and a much more cost-efficient solution as well to its sister on the right, which is the cast stone, which will make up the base and the front entry of the building. Similar in color, again, the trash enclosure is almost 300 feet away from the road, and lots of landscaping in front as well. So we would like to propose a consideration to accept the split face cast stone, or the split face concrete masonry unit for that trash enclosure. Other than that, that's our proposal today, and if you have any questions, we will be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carteret, do we have a staff report, sir?
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant provided a lot of the details, so I won't try to duplicate the comments that were made. Again, this property is currently zoned C2 commercial, as is the existing training facility and the existing fire station. And Conway Street, which provides the principal access to this property, is classified as a local street. Again, the building's a little over 5,000 square foot, one-story building for administrative personnel. This lot is a lot that was part of the Town Center Fourth Plat, approved all the way back in 2001. And the training tower facility to the north received site plan approval back in 2004. Again, Mr. Crass at our engineering division did review the application, determined that it does comply with all the applicable requirements of city code, so we have adequate street access, water, sewer, and stormwater facilities to serve the property. And the building and all setbacks of the building have been complied with. As I indicated, there is a type A landscape screen required along the east property line. Further to the east, along Park Street, are existing two-family dwelling units with the zoning of R2 on the property. The type A screening is required. I do want to note type A screen is actually required along the south property line. When the Sunset Plaza townhome development, Sean Siebert came forward well over a year ago and asked for rezoning of that land to go from commercial to allow the townhomes. We felt that the developer of that project should be the one installing the type A screen, because previous under the C2 zoning, no type A was required, and suddenly if they change the zoning, now you have placed the burden on land they don't own to the north to install the screen. Out of fairness, the developer, Mr. Siebert, agreed he would put in the type A landscape screen on his property to buffer his units and a future facility that would be on this property. So one will be there when the Sunset Plaza development begins construction later this year. Again, four-sided architectures for the buildings provided, the materials, the brick and the cast stone, the metal soffits, and all of that, the articulation of the building, all comply with our building design standards of the UDC. They show the pedestrian access to Conway Street. Stormwater control, there'll be an on-site system to gather the water. It'll actually direct the storm water to the existing storm sewer system in the town center development. All the storm water from this lot and from the other lots of the Sunset Plaza townhomes all go to the existing stormwater basin on Sunset Lane. That basin will have some additional improvements done when the townhome facility is constructed. But it was built to handle complete build-out of this property. The applicant did identify the trash enclosure materials, so we bring that to the Commission's attention, and if you agree with what their materials are requesting to use, we just ask that you state that as part of the motion, that you're accepting the materials that the applicant's requesting to use as part of the enclosure. I believe they have the materials at the end of the table here. Staff submitted proposed findings of fact on this site plan application. And we ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission, again, determine the acceptability of the trash enclosure materials, and staff recommends the commission accept the proposed findings and approve the Fire District Administration Building site plan subject to the 12 conditions that are outlined in the staff report. And again, for a new facility, these are in essence, the 12 standard conditions we place on site plan approval. So that would conclude staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Carteret. Members of the commission, at this point, I would ask, does anybody have any discussion items, questions of staff or the applicant? I guess I have one real quick one for the applicant regarding or maybe even staff can answer this, that way you don't have to come back up here. The materials, I mean, we're talking about CMU, so we're talking about basically a cinder block that has a fine finished edge versus a cinder block that's painted or has an additional material, added, like adhered to it. It is, I don't know, I guess that's essentially my question.
I know the staff has looked at the materials and had discussion with the applicant on what they're proposing. We just felt with the the language of the code specifically saying the same materials. We wanted the commission to see the materials.
Yes, sir.
To understand the color is the same. It's a similar request to what you saw for the scooters that recently came through for commission, which you did approve that modification as well. So we want to just bring it to your attention that this is what they're requesting. We have no objections to the request.
Okay, that's mostly what I was interested in. Just for previous experiences, since we did do that with scooters, did they come back at a later time to then request an alteration to their, obviously that doesn't apply to this case, but purely for the standpoint that the applicant then, could come back and then request to downgrade the materials a second time, essentially?
They could be, and for this evening, we would like you to be specific that you're approving the materials as presented to the commission this evening.
Very good.
That way there's no gray area on what they can and cannot do.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Any additional questions or comments from the commission? If not, I would also entertain a motion to dispose of this item as well, please.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission determine that the trash enclosure materials are acceptable and that we then accept the staff proposed findings of fact and approve case number 21014 South Metropolitan Fire Protection District Administration Building Site Plan, subject to the conditions as listed.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Turnbow, a second by Commissioner Manser. I'll see if I can recall this, to accept the materials presented for the trash enclosure as well as accept the staff findings of fact subject to the conditions listed regarding case 21014, the South Metro Fire Department Administration Building Site Plan.
Subject to the 1 through 12 conditions.
Yeah, okay, I said subject to the conditions listed, the 1 through 12 conditions listed. So accept materials for the trash enclosure and accept staff finding of fact on case 21014, the South Metro Fire Department Administrative Building Site Plan, subject to the 12 conditions listed. Is that succinct enough, sir? Wonderful. All those in favor? Seeing 8 hands again, passes 8-0. Okay, and that brings us to our final case of the evening, case 21015, the Raymore Galleria watermark rezoning. This is this item does require a public hearing, which I will open at this time. Just a reminder to members of the commission, this is a rezoning application only. We're only talking about the rezoning of the property. And since the public hearing is now open, I will then now ask the applicant to please come forward and present your case to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Plan Commission. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Chris Alexander. I'm with Watermark Residential, and I'm here with Garrett Linville. Garrett is our development manager on this project. He'll speak here in a few minutes. I'm the region leader for Watermark for the Midwest region. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present our company and our project to you here tonight. What I'll do first is just tell you a little bit about Watermark, a little bit of our history and who we are. Then I'll introduce Garrett and he'll come up and talk a little more specifically about the project. Do I need to give you my address as well?
It can't hurt for the record. Thank you.
111 Monument Circle, Suite 1500, Indianapolis, Indiana. So we are an Indiana-based company, and we were formed in 1986 by the two gentlemen that you see there on the presentation. They're still very actively involved in our business. We're a privately held company, and Watermark will be the developer, contractor, and property manager of this project that we're proposing to hear tonight. John and Paul focused, throughout the 90s. The company was started in 1986 and really focused on retail development as well as general contracting and building both of those businesses. In their early days, they had some development in the residential side, and a lot of that was single-family rentals, which ironically we're doing more of today. But anyway, 2010, Watermark Residential was formed, and we focus solely on the development, construction, and management of Class A luxury multifamily projects. You can see the map there. We have built across the country in all of these different markets. 2010 was the start of our company, and then in 2018 we started an in-house property management firm as well. So we, again, will develop, we will construct, and we will professionally manage the project that we're presenting. We used to hire third-party management, and just from a branding standpoint, and as we moved into more of a long-term ownership mentality, felt like that was the next best step for us as a group in terms of managing the projects the way we want with the brand that we expect. In terms of just some statistics for you, we currently have 2,200 units in our portfolio. That's our stabilized property portfolio nationally. We've got another 3,400 units right now in lease up. Lease up means that we are currently either finishing construction or have completed it and are trying to lease it to a stabilized. And stabilized in our world means 95, well, not 80% is what we would consider to be stabilized, with a goal of being at somewhere in the mid-90s. And then we've got an additional 7 projects under construction totaling another 2,000 units. So we've completed 50 projects since 2010, and we'll be well into the 60s by the end of this year. I tell you all these statistics not really to brag, but to really give you a feel for our company, that we're experienced and we'll deliver the project that we're proposing to you here in Raymore. And as I said, Garrett will detail for you. We're not going to make any changes. We're not going to provide anything less than what we're talking to you about tonight. We get better on every project that we do. We expect to be better, and we think that Raymore will benefit from that experience of those 50 projects that we've developed over the last 12 years. This is all we do. Our division develops, builds, and manages Class A product. And we're excited about adding this project to your community and being a part of it going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Garrett, and he'll get into a little more specifics here on what we intend to provide here.
Thank you, Chris. And for the record, my name is Garrett Linville. I have the same address as Chris at 111 Monument Circle, Suite 1500 in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so I'm going to talk a bit more about what we're going to specifically bring to Raymore, or at least what we're proposing to bring to Raymore. And that is our 3-story structure, which we call the Classic product. So this structure has enclosed stairwells for all units, has a walkout balcony for every unit. It has thoughtful appearance and design. Each project is designed independently by our local architect. It comes with premium interior features for every unit, a strong community atmosphere, and then I'm going to scroll through a few of our pictures of some of the example projects that we've completed. So feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So talk a little bit more about the interiors, and these interiors are in every unit, so there are no downgraded or cheaper units. So all of our units will come with a gourmet bar for the kitchens and countertops. That's come with granite or quartz countertops with tile backsplashes, nice cabinets, extra cabinet space, full stainless steel modern appliances, modern plumbing fixtures, tiled showers, glass doors, 9-foot ceilings everywhere, walk-in closets with custom wood shelving, large windows with the 2-inch, the nicer blinds, not the plastic ones, full-size washer and dryer in every single unit, regardless of how many bedrooms there are. And I'm going to scroll through a few more pictures of the interiors just to give you guys some color on that, so feel free again to stop me if you have any questions. As you can see, they are quite spacious, and we do have a high emphasis on natural light and a lot of windows, trying to get all that light in there that we can. Next, we'll talk a bit about the community. And so every community is designed to the same standards for us. So these come with professionally decorated clubhouses with TVs, kitchens, conference rooms, business centers, coffee bars, and these are in every single clubhouse that we do. Additionally, there are Wi-Fi hotspots all throughout the property, so you can be mobile. There are 24-hour state-of-the-art fitness centers completely decked out, so there is no need to go purchase an additional gym membership. They come with fully resort-style swimming pools, with cabanas, poolside hammocks, entertainment areas, whether it be bocce ball or games or extra landscaping, fire pits, grills, pet-friendly areas such as dog parks and dog wash areas. We have bike repair shops. We have 24-hour emergency maintenance. And we do actually offer valet trash, so there is no walking across the community to the dumpster or the compactor at all hours of the night. We have a service that will come to your door and collect your trash for you, so that there is no extra walking across the property. And we do offer interior cleaning and security checks while you're traveling. So here are just a few extra pictures of our clubhouses, our amenities, and some of the community services we have. Next, we'll talk through the site plan. So we have met with staff, I believe 3 or 4 times now, and here is where we started off. So, albeit a bit ugly due to all the topography lines below, we began here with the same amount of units of 300 units on the same property size. And we also began with these renderings or elevations, which are exemplary of a project that we had completed in Texas. So we heard a number of concerns and questions about the site plan and about ways that we could potentially improve alongside the elevations as well. So after those meetings, we came back with upgraded architectural elevations. We spent more time, more effort, more dollars to develop them alongside an updated site plan. So specifically on the architecture elevations, I know it might be difficult to see on a quick glance here, but we have now taken the stone from just a small 5-foot skirt on the bottom all the way to the roof line. Additionally, we have added more bump outs and colors to add different architectural features and bring color to the eye. And then lastly, we've added a few other accents as well as chimneys to the side to further add accents. Here's a different color. And then here is the updated site plan. So this site plan shows more thoughtful open space with a heavier buffer to the east for the single family over there, alongside with extra detention areas to better handle all of the storm water. We now have the amenity areas detailed and shown out. While these are not final and we have not engineered all these with a professional landscape architect, these are generally what we are planning to do, and these will be held to the same standards as the rest of our properties. So you can see that we have the clubhouse up here in the northwest corner. That'll have the resort style pool, the fitness center, and will be surrounded by units. Additionally, we have a dog park shown, centrally located to the site, alongside a central courtyard in the middle of those 4 buildings. And those courtyards are typically seating areas, grill areas, pickleball courts. They're heavily landscaped with string lights, and they're kind of communal areas where everyone can go and hang out and participate in some level of a resident event, or just go to get away. So, more specifically, this site plan shows 300 units. These 300 units are arranged in what we call a 40-50-10 mix, which is 40% 1 beds, 50% 2 beds, and 10% 3 beds. All of these units we parked at a 1.7 parking ratio, which for us works out to be about 1 parking space per bedroom. Additionally, there's going to be an option for detached garages for many of the units. Our goal is 33% of all units will have options to use a detached garage. These garages, while not shown in the elevations, will be skinned the same way as the buildings. They'll not be downgraded. They'll have the stone, they'll have the same roofing, they'll have the same finishes. Additionally, we are now showing a secondary access point on the south side of the site to help with both fire access, connectivity, and an additional in and out for the residents. One last thing to mention is that we are currently planning significant landscape buffers to the east around the detention area, as well as on the west around the current detention area that serves the north. So while it might not be shown completely on this plan, that is fully the intention upon arrival of site plan approval to have this fully landscaped out professionally by a landscape architect. That is all I have. I'll open it up to any questions, or I guess the staff report next.
Thank you. Does anybody have an immediate question of the applicant? Otherwise, I would send it to staff. Mr. Mayor.
Garrett, could you speak to the frontal area back off of Dean as the trailhead? I know it's not depicted on the newer site plan, but we had discussed the potential for that. Could you kind of discuss what you guys have agreed to?
Sure. So currently there is a sidewalk here that leads down south into a trail area, and I believe currently there is no parking area for that trailhead. And so in concert with staff, as the mayor has mentioned, we have agreed to produce a trailhead, which is not shown on this plan, that would allow for some sort of parking area, an area where you can get started on your trail walk. And so that would be located in front of the current detention area to the west in that green space in between the two entry points. And we would work with staff to make sure that works from an engineering perspective, from a traffic perspective, and allow people a place to park and head off on the trail.
Thank you. Any other immediate comments or questions? Otherwise, I will turn it over to Mr. Carteret for the staff report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Again, the applicant went into a lot of detail, of which I'll try not to duplicate with staff comments. I'll provide the basic overview. The specific request this evening is to reclassify the zoning of this 21-acre parcel from its current C3 commercial to the R3B, which is the apartment community residential district. Again, the property east side of Dean Avenue, directly south of the Office Max and the Sam's Club in the Raymore Galleria Shopping Center. As far as surrounding zoning, to the north, the shopping center is zoned C3P. It is a planned district. To the east is the Fox Haven subdivision, which is zoned R1 single family. To the south, it's zoned R1P, the planned district, and it's undeveloped at this time, but it is part of the Timber Trail subdivision, so land from Johnston Drive north to the south property line of the subject property is proposed for single family. Then across the street to the west is our R3A district, which is our multifamily townhome zoning district. Note that the major thoroughfare plan does classify Dean Avenue as a minor arterial street. Again, this evening we did advertise the application for public hearing. Do want to enter into the record the notices that we mailed to the adjoining property owners, the notice of publication in the Journal, our Unified Development Code, the application that was submitted, our growth management plan, and the staff report submitted this evening. This property was reclassified from agricultural to the C3 district in 2005. That was at the time that all of the property for the Raymore Galleria Shopping Center was rezoned. The property to the south, the Timber Trails, was actually done in advance of the commercial zoning, and it was rezoned in 2004. As a rezoning request, there was a good neighbor meeting held on June 23rd. We had 10 people attending that meeting, and we identified in the staff report the questions that were asked and the responses from either the applicant or staff. I note that the requested zoning, the R3B zoning, again, is the apartment community district, is intended to accommodate the multifamily residential development where there's sufficient services and infrastructure to support higher density residential development. The principal use of the land is multifamily development, which is apartment community under single ownership or unified control on one tract. I note there are 8 other properties. I think the staff report said 7. I added 1. There's 8 that are currently zoned R3B. Of course, Lofts at Fox Ridge currently under construction there at Eagle Glen. Manor Homes across the street in Eagle Glen. Then we had a few projects that have not been constructed yet. The Senior Village, which is north of the Price Chopper, Grant Park Villas, which is east of town off of Adams Street, Bristol Manor off of Sunrise Drive is zoned R3B, as well as the Redwood of Raymore facility, Greenway Villas off of Lucy Webb Road, and the Walnut Estates, the senior living facility off of Walnut Street. I know apartments are permitted in the R3B zoning district. There are special conditions. I've outlined them in the staff report. Specifically, take note when if the project moves forward, at site plan there's separation between buildings and building design requirements that do have to be met. I identify the development standards that are applicable to this district as well in the staff report. I note that if the property is rezoned based upon the acreage of the property at 21 acres, the maximum density could be allowed would be up to 458 units, which is the 21.7 units per acre. Again, that's maximum density. The developer is proposing the apartment community of 300 units, which gives us a density of 14.26 units per acre. I mention that because that is really the density that you see of most of the apartment communities within the city. Manor Homes that I mentioned is 14.59. The Lofts is the highest at 16.54. And you see the others in the report from Walnut Estates, Grant Park Village, and the Senior Village between 12 and 15 units an acre. I note that the rezoning request is submitted to the Raymore Peculiar School District to the administrative staff for their review and comment. They indicate, as they usually do, that they're aware of the development because we talk about these proposed projects very early in the planning stage. I do note that the property is within the current attendance boundary line for the Eagle Glen Elementary School. One of the comments that came up certainly at the Good Neighbor meeting, I expect to come up this evening as well, is on traffic generation. Because projects of apartment communities, 300 units, the amount of vehicular traffic is always a discussion. And what I want to identify here is that the city relies on the Institute of Transportation Engineers. There's a trip generation manual that we follow very closely, and it basically tracks projects throughout the entire country over many years, many different projects. They use a peak hour for traffic time. They use an AM peak time, and they use a PM. For Raymore, we typically always go off of the PM trip generation, so that's between 4 and 6 p.m. What I want to note here is that the trip generation rate for an apartment community of 3 stories is 0.39 trips per hour per unit. To compare that with trip generation rate for a single family home is 1.01, so considerably higher than an apartment rate. Then when you get to commercial uses, which then we base it on the square footage of the building, a typical just small retail store is 2.71. A fast food restaurant goes up to 16.92. The point I'm trying to make here is that an apartment community is one of the lowest trip generation rates for specifically for residential uses. Only senior adult apartment communities have a lower rate as far as residential trip generation. But the rate that this project would generate is significantly lower than it would be for any commercial use. That becomes important because when we look at, okay, impact on Dean Avenue. Dean Avenue, of course, is a minor arterial, 4 lanes in front of this facility. But when the Dean Avenue was designed and constructed, it was done so to address the traffic of the land uses that were planned in the area. So we utilize commercial traffic generation for this property, when in fact, if the reclassification comes in as residential apartments, trip generation is much lower. So we've already reduced the number of trips that would be on Dean Avenue through a reclassification of zoning. But the roadway is also designed to handle all the undeveloped land and timber trails, as well as the land to the south of Lucy Webb that feeds up for anybody going northbound. All that's taken into account when the city planned and constructed Dean Avenue. So from the city engineer's perspective, from the traffic studies that have been done, Dean Avenue can easily handle the traffic generated from this project. And I mentioned that I know there's going to be discussion, or would anticipate such, that, well, the issue's on 58 Highway. What I'm trying to say is that Raymore takes care of what we can, what we control, and that's the streets within Raymore. We've made significant improvements to the intersection of Dean and 58 over the years. We've made 3 such improvements since I've been here, where we've added width, we've added a dual left turn lane, we've added a right turn lane for northbound traffic, and we actually are currently studying additional improvements on the Dean Avenue south of the light at 58 to try to create better traffic flow and longer queue lanes, longer turning lanes, et cetera. So we're currently working on a proposal to submit to our city council to continue to make improvements. The city, with the 2020 general obligation bond issue, are committing money to the improvement of 49 Highway. We've been working with Belton, but had another meeting with Belton today on build grant applications that we're submitting. So from the city's perspective, we are even working outside our city limits to make improvements to get the traffic on 58 flowing a little freer. And if we get the approval for the widening of 49 Highway, that's where a lot of the bottlenecks happen. Anybody who travels, and I travel that way every day, see that the difficulty is people trying to merge onto 49 Highway. If we have 3 lanes of traffic, it's going to get people off of 50 Highway even quicker. So we're making the investments where we can off-site, out of the city boundaries, but I really wanted to mention that traffic generation from this project is actually less than what it could be under a commercial development scenario. I do want to indicate that rezoning, again, is step 1 of really 4 steps to ultimately get the project approved. If the property is rezoned, their next step would be to do a preliminary plat for the property. They would also have to do a final plat and a site plan, which gets into all the details, some of which you saw tonight, the details of architecture and parking and landscaping, et cetera. I do want to briefly touch on one of the utility aspects of the property. Of course, sanitary sewer crosses through the property, water line along Dean Avenue, all adequate to serve the property. Stormwater control, the existing detention basin that is on the front part of the property, they're incorporating it within their development. It actually handles the stormwater for the west half of their property, but it also handles stormwater from Raymore Galleria to the north, specifically Sam's Club, Office Max, and the retail center along Dean Avenue, all drain down to that pond. As part of their proposal, the applicant touched on it. With the crest in the middle of the property, the east half of the property does drain towards the east, and so they are proposing a detention basin along that east property line, creating a significant buffer, almost 300 feet buffer between the single-family homes in Foxhaven and the apartment buildings that are proposed. So stormwater, we feel, just on a preliminary level, is going to be adequately addressed. I note the property, again, it's been zoned commercial since 2005. There has been absolutely no interest from a commercial standpoint of anybody looking at this property for commercial use. The initial plan for the property was more of an office development, never really intended for a high-end user, a big box user of commercial. I think they realized it was far off 58 Highway, potentially blocked visibly by buildings in the actual Galleria Center. And I think those factors really weighed into, we just have had no interest from anybody on a commercial side. The interest has been multifamily. We have had others before Watermark talk about the property. This is the first application that's actually been filed where somebody had an interest to move forward with rezoning the property. Our Economic Development Director, David Gress, did submit a statement that I've incorporated into the staff report. Again, he addresses the fact that he feels the site does present a lot of challenges concerning development for commercial uses. He classifies this as a 3rd-tier commercial property. So oftentimes when we hear 1st tier, of course, has the frontage along 58, Second tier is the next line of commercial or office behind it. This is actually a third tier site. And with Lowe's, Office Max, Sam's Club, being larger buildings, it really blocks the visibility of the site. And then with the stormwater basin taking up 2/3 of the frontage, it really doesn't have that road impact that you would need for commercial property. And so Mr. Gress in his comments indicates that he believes the multifamily use on the site makes a logical transition from the commercial to the single family to the south, similar to what we have even on the west side of D between Walmart, the townhomes, and then single family will be to the south of it. A couple of things about again, adding 300 multifamily units to the city. A lot of people talk about all we're seeing is multifamily. We just got the townhomes down at the venue. We got Sunset Plaza townhomes coming in east of City Hall. So I provided a couple of scenarios here where I talk about the actual number of units that we have in the city. And we currently have 1,344 multifamily units. So these would be our fourplexes, our townhomes, and our apartments. And they comprise 15% of all dwelling units. And the Foxwood Springs development is multifamily. So when you look at their apartments in the main building and all of their individual units, those are multifamily as well. But currently, today, we have 80% of all units are single family. When we start adding in the multifamily developments that we've recently approved or under construction, the lofts, the Grant Park Villas, the venue, townhomes, Timber Trails has additional townhomes that could be built. This proposal this evening, we'd be adding 1,379 units, multifamily, with all those projects coming forward. And it does sound like a lot of units, and it is a lot of units. What we have to do is balance the multifamily that we're getting with the requests such as this with all the single family requests that we have. And so I've identified those to show the balance. When we talk about all the single family developments we've recently approved or are coming forward within the next month, we talk about the Parkside subdivision, Saddlebrook, if it gets approved, the Sendera project, which you haven't seen yet, but down in the Good Ranch, requests coming forward. The build out of Creekmore, Timber Trails single family, Whitetail Run is coming back with additional phases. If we add those in, we're adding almost 2,500 single family units. So if you combine all the existing units with the proposed multifamily and proposed single family, we're still at 78% single family community. That's very high. In comparison with other communities, 78% single family is significantly high. Overall, our multifamily would be at 19%. I do just want to mention, with the change of zoning from commercial to the apartment, type A landscape screening is still required, and it would be, as the applicant mentioned, on the east property line, and it also required on the south property line. So when they come forward with site plan at that time frame, that's when the type A screening is addressed. And I also mentioned the staff report, the land to the south is part of a valid preliminary plat for Timber Trails. It does show single family. South Metropolitan Fire District did review the application as well. The applicant identified and mentioned the Southern Access Drive, which is not only for residents, but provides that really nice turnaround access for the fire department to access the site. Again, the engineering division submitted a memorandum on provision of facilities. We've already identified the stormwater and water sewer capacity is there, as well as the street capacity for traffic flow. Staff submitted proposed findings of fact for your consideration on the site plan. Again, I note city staff does support the reclassification of zoning. And we had serious discussions about removing commercial land from the city. Anytime you start talking about taking commercial land away, you have to give it serious consideration, especially going to a residential classification. But we did not consider this to be prime commercial. I think that's evident that the property has not had any interest commercially. Our economic development director's statements, as well as the ownership group of the property, is who authorized the application to be filed. So I think they see that residential units is the highest and best use for this property. Yet having a dense residential community adjacent to our commercial areas certainly supports our businesses. It creates what we feel is a good transitional land use, commercial, multifamily, single family. The property owner to the south, the Hunt Midwest development, are aware of the application. We have not had correspondence with them, but they have not objected to the change of zoning. Again, we've noted that we've determined the infrastructure can support the proposed residential development of the properties. Staff does recommend the commission accept the staff proposed findings and forward this rezoning application to the city council with a recommendation of approval. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Cataret. I'm going to do something a little different with our procedure. I'm going to actually jump into staff questions. Yes, sir, Mr. Zur.
I believe you were going to be looking for potential questions for staff as well.
Yes, that's what I was going to do, is jump into, because normally we would go in the public hearing, but I want to make sure that the commission members have a chance to ask questions of staff and get maybe some questions answered that might lend to some answers for some other folks. Any questions of staff? Yes,
So go ahead,
Sir,
Tom.
Mr.
No, you go ahead. All right, sure.
Mr. Mayor.
I did want to ask Garrett one more time, because you guys gave an extremely nice answer to staff on this, but why Raymore?
Sure. So every time we look into a new project, we do extensive research, and we have a large team behind us that you guys haven't met out here in public, and they are our market research and our acquisitions team, and they do a ton of detailed research into this. And so the information that they've provided to us that makes this a stellar location for this kind of a product is, one, there's steady population growth. Two, there's growth and strong jobs, obviously with everything going on south and everything nearby. Three, there's great schools here. Four, there's a strong retail presence, and we would be highly connected to that retail. And so, as Jim mentioned, that is highly attractive to us. Five, high connectivity to local highways and ways to get around. Six, we see high occupancies of all other multifamily and similar comparable projects. When we see something at 95% occupancy, we consider that full. Most groups would never go above 95% occupancy, as that stunts them from pushing rents and then allowing people to move in and out. And then lastly, we conduct a site tour with all of our leadership, as well as Chris and I. And we drive through, and we kind of just give it the feel test. Does it feel nice driving through? Is this someplace where we would like to be, where we would like to be connected to, and where we would feel comfortable living? And that was a resounding yes from both our leadership and us. And so those are really the 7 or 8 reasons that we've said yes to Raymore.
Thank you. Commissioner Ingrid, did you have a question, sir?
Yes, I do. It's for Mr. Alexander, if I could. My question is, I was listening carefully as you were talking about developing and then construction and managing. What is the year was your very first commercial property built?
Officially, 1986.
Do you have any, what I'm interested in, I would like to see some pictures of some property that you've had, because what came to my mind was cradle to grave. Okay.
Sure.
And if you're going to do these kind of things, I'd like to see some of your properties from 10 years ago, 15 years,
Sure.
20 years ago, to see what they look like today, because that's the future of Raymore.
Yeah.
I would just make a quick statement. This is just the rezoning application. So that would be definitely welcomed if this gets past the zoning change point. That we would definitely like some additional information on projects. I think that would be that's a good future request.
Happy to provide all of that.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions for staff or the applicant at this time? If not, I just real quick, Jim, you'd mentioned some of the other multifamily properties around here. We think of the Manor Homes. We've got the complex over by Culver's, the name is escaping me, I apologize. Do we have a general occupancy rate information as far as, you know, what we have in the city? He mentioned, you know, high occupancy rates. Do we have some rough idea for what current apartments are? I mean, are places slammed, or do we not have a need for?
We have some of the information. You mentioned behind Culver's is the Ridgeway Villas, the townhomes units. Those are at 100% occupancy and have been, and they have a waiting list that exceeds 100 residents. So that one's always full. Manor Homes has, for the last 3 years, averaged 96% occupancy. It was recently purchased in 2018, and when they purchased it, they had 98% occupancy. So I think that bodes well for the community that those apartments have continually been occupied. We had recently with city council members did a tour of the Lofts building that's currently under construction, that apartment community, and a meeting with their leasing staff. They won't open the first units until probably close to August 1st. They'll open up the first 3 buildings and then kind of do it in waves after that. Of their first 3 buildings, they're at already 55% occupancy pre-leased before opening the facility. They've been giving tours for about 2 weeks. So they're very, very excited to get, and those are only the studio 1 and 2 bedrooms. The 3-bedroom units are in other buildings that will be coming more in August, September. So we believe 55% occupancy without even opening the doors yet, pretty significant. So demand seems to be there just generally for the communities, and I think that was expressed by the applicant.
Thank you. One more quick question. I mean, obviously, I know a lot of people would be inclined to drive north on Dean Avenue to get to 58. Does Johnson Drive presently go through to the outer road, or is that planned? And that could be Mr. Crass.
It's planned.
It is planned?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be another exit route, so to say. Okay, that was it for my questions. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Urquilla?
Piggybacking on that, if they get to the outer road, is there plans of expanding that to 2 left turn lanes or anything like that to get onto 58?
That's under MoDOT jurisdiction, and as Mr. Catter explained, we have done what we can with our infrastructure, and what other future planning is, we don't really have a lot of control over.
Understood, but kind of like you mentioned, have there been like attempts with or applications to try to get that addressed or anything along those lines, or at least, you know, trying to address that?
I think there's bigger issues there. The biggest issue is that the traffic signals need to be separated. A simple 2 left turns is not going to increase the capacity of the bridge or other things there. That it really has to be a holistic approach to that whole interchange.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we will move into the public comment. We're going to do a few more things that are a little different as we've moved from the applicant to city staff to some questions by the commission. We would, you know, that way we can appropriately weigh consideration of all comments. We would ask that residents that live within the city limits of Raymore, who are welcome to come up for the public hearing at this time, please state your name and address for the record. All public comments will be heard tonight. We're just going to kind of keep it in an order tonight. So please come to the podium, state your name, your address. You will have 5 minutes to speak. If somebody has come up and already presented a comment or an opinion and yours is the same, please just reiterate some dittos to it as opposed to going through and basically rehashing for 5 minutes what somebody else has already said. So we do welcome any comments from the public at this time. Please come and make your comments to the podium. Thanks, sir. And again, your name and address for the record, sir.
Yeah, my name is Mark Steers. I live at 401 Meadowlark Drive in Timber Trails. And my house backs up to the trail that's right there in Timber Trail. So my question is, are there going to be any kind of improvements or anything to that trail system to handle all the residents that are probably going to start using it? Or so that I just wanted to bring it to your attention that may be a concern on maybe doing some kind of improvements to it, because my house actually backs up right to that trail there. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, and as we get to the end of the comments, we will allow the applicant or the city to address any of these issues. Any other public comments? Otherwise, yes, please.
My name is Renee O'Brien. I also live in Timber Trails, 422 River Birch Road. I guess my main concern is I've only lived here for 6 years, so I'm still learning about the things that happen here in Raymore. I do enjoy living here. As far as the traffic information that you provided, although I do understand that there is a different flow for commercial versus multi-home residential, the traffic that I deal with on a daily basis here in Raymore is not just AM and PM rush hour. It is constant traffic that also increases accidents. There's also, of course, impatience that occurs everywhere. I actually grew up on the East Coast, so I fully am aware. Enjoy living out here. People are much nicer. But I actually have to choose my routes based on what time of day. I leave my home at approximately 5:30 to 5:45 in the morning. That is the only time I can leave and not have to worry about what kind of traffic I'm going to run into that would affect my commute. I typically head south on Dean to the Rotary to take the outer road, which is the most efficient route for me to take. That also gets me to 49 Highway with the least amount of traffic interruption. If I leave at any other time after that, I'm having to deal with quite a bit more heavy traffic, and then also a lot of the merging. You have a significant number of lights between Dean and 49. I know that you've categorized Dean as a minor artery, but when you actually live on Dean and you have to deal with the Walmart, the Sam's Club, the Lowe's, which I frequent often, it's unbearable to deal with those merging traffics. And then, of course, we have the Big Biscuit and all those other various smaller franchises that are there, which I want more businesses. I have spent a large portion of my career living in those kind of apartments. They're very nice. I really do enjoy your presentation and what these look like. They should build here. My concern is the location, because even though we're saying it's a lower amount of traffic, we also have to take into consideration that in addition to all the other traffic that's coming in from all the other areas. I am now looking at having to divert myself from the outer road all the way down to Cass County with this project. There's just no way I can assure that I'm going to get to my job, which is in healthcare, which I have to work in the city because, you know, not much here. And I mean, especially if I'm taking call, which means I have a 30-minute travel commute time to get there, to get to the operating room. So all this stuff plays a role in my life, and I'm sure it does in other people's lives who maybe don't have the kind of job requirements that I do. So my only thing is, why is it we're just looking at rezoning this area? Do we have no other options where these gentlemen can build their apartments where we don't have to rezone? I don't think Dean and 58 is ready for this kind of traffic. I mean, it's already terrible. I lived up north for a period of time over by Liberty, and 152 is your 58. And in the span of those 10 years, I saw 152 turn into what 58 is right now, into an absolute nightmare. And even now, with all the expansion and the commercial businesses and all that expansion, they still can't handle it. And the taxes up there are outrageous. I'm glad I moved here, but I'm already seeing my taxes go up exponentially. So when you're talking about asking questions for what these buildings are going to look like 10 years from now based on what they look like before, and then you're saying, well, that's another meeting, this is about rezoning. Well, why are we talking about approving a rezoning if we don't even know what all the answers to the questions are? Because once you start moving this forward, which I know we need the expansion and we need the apartments, you're rubber stamping things, progressing it along, and then all of a sudden you're like, you get to the point where you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't have rezoned that because we looked at all this other stuff and this isn't maybe a good idea. They need to build their apartments here. That much I can tell you. You have to increase the caliber of what's going on in Raymore, because otherwise the other aspect of it is you downgrade yourself. And that's not why I moved here. I moved here because it's a better life.
Sorry, I didn't mean to have that so loud.
Nope, you're fine.
No.
That's all.
Any additional?
No, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize, I did not mean to have my ringer at full volume for the timer. Any additional comments, please come forward. Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure to turn the volume down in case we go 5 minutes again. I won't be so rude.
I'm Jessie Saladino, Saladino. I'm at 200 South Darby Drive. And I have two questions. I'm actually right south of where this ends, and we have severe rain runoff on a normal basis anyways. And I understand the retention pond is there, but it doesn't back up to my property. And I'm wondering how that's going to affect excess water running off the corner of the parking lot that isn't going to drain into the retention pond, and what it's going to do when they don't develop behind them, because that's part of timber trails. If they have this point where they have excavated property and then nothing, is it going to cause an issue to the houses directly behind that? I don't know if that's on a future meeting, but it's very concerning. My second concern is about headlights going into our windows of our houses. I see a retention pond and I see trees, but I do not see anything to prevent headlights in my windows at all hours of the day. And that is my concerns.
Thank you very much. Any final comments? Yes, sir, please.
All right. Hello, I'm Terrence Chambers. I live off South Darby Drive, and we're going to be pretty close to the apartments. So lots of concerns as she brought up. One thing that we've been discussing is this the right area for the apartment complex? I also play around with the ideas of commercial stuff, issues all around, and kind of one of those things that we have to kind of live with, and I think about what's the win-win for the area, for us, for Raymore, for everyone. One of the big concerns, I know we got a new apartment complex that was just built, and also right behind houses. Privacy is an issue. We'll have 3-story buildings right behind our houses, look straight into our backyards, into our houses, windows. So that's definitely, traffic was already mentioned, so that's a big issue. I know we can talk about hypothetical numbers, but I live right off at Darby, try to get on 58, try to get on Dean, try to get through the traffic light. Traffic is really bad. Because of COVID, I've been working from home for the last year, and pretty soon a lot of companies are going to start going back to work. A lot of them are we're planning in September. So I'm concerned about traffic now, getting on the 58, getting on the 71. I work on the other side of downtown. The reverse also, coming back into down 71, the traffic's always bad. And we have all these new warehouses and facilities that are being built, so we got Chewy and everything, so I don't know what the increase of traffic is going to look like from that. We have a apartment complex going in right now behind Target, so that's currently they're destroying the land and doing building there, so that's another apartment complex nearby, putting a stress on the roadways, and I don't know what the grocery stores are going to be like with, this is a lot of families and people moving in. Are they going to be able to keep up with the demand? And I know it's a lot of time between now and a couple years for all these to be built and people moving in, but those are things to be thinking about. Traffic in the AM and PM, as I kind of mentioned, is definitely concerns, and I know that commercial could bring in, more traffic, but we're talking about specific times of days for high traffic for commercial, and you can look on Google to see, hey, when do people most visit these places? So, rush hour for work is definitely a big concern. So water runoff is a huge issue that right now I'm trying to get addressed. I just moved here in January. My girlfriend I live with, she has family here. She grew up here. She's from here. So, we're familiar with Raymore, and we decided to move here out of Johnson County, Kansas, which is kind of just, I don't know, pricing and everything is just insane. I don't like the way Kansas is going. So we decided to move here, and we have floods every time it rains. We have a lot of water erosion. We have massive hills behind our houses. We're missing dirt in the backyard. We have a crack in the concrete or in the foundation. We have shifting of our concrete in our driveways and sidewalks. The asphalts in the streets have potholes from all the water runoff. So that's a big concern for what's going to happen when they build this big pond. And I know it's still preliminary, and they are still, they want to see, can we get rezoned before we move forward? But they mentioned, hey, we're going to have, water's going to overflow out of the pond. And when I asked them, where is that water going to go? Can this water handle the amount of water that we get in this area? And that's something that they haven't figured out or considered yet, which I understand would be later. And this is hearsay. I don't know because I moved in. One of our neighbors had mentioned that when Sam's went in, there was stormwater runoff that pretty much destroyed a house, and the people had to move out because it was so bad that their insurance wouldn't cover it because they didn't have flood insurance. And Sam said, not our fault. I don't know, whatever happened. And again, that's hearsay. We want to make sure whatever happens, there's no damage to our property, if there's explosives, whatever. That's a big concern. That's not just apartments, that's whatever goes in there. The schools, I think you mentioned schools, but I just want to make sure if there are a lot of children that come into the apartments that the schools can handle it. Because I know there's, I don't know if there's a little bit of a problem. We're getting close to max capacity or whatever for schools, so that's just another thing that we're concerned about.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Okay. Any additional members of the public? Yes, sir.
Yes, Felipe Jones. I live in Timber Trails. I'm new to the community, sorry. 402 Bedlock Drive. My concern is, not concern, but just a question is, will this be a gated community? I know we have a situation locally where people are getting break-ins in some cars. I would hate for this many units to attract more of that kind of stuff to happen so close to my home and to bring those kinds of things this way. It'd make me feel better if it was a gated community to, again, not to not invite those kinds of things to come more this way, closer to our homes. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay. Last call for any public comments tonight, residents or surrounding communities. Okay, so with that then, Mr. Zer, would you like me to go ahead and close the public or let us address some of those concerns and then close afterwards?
I would let the commission or the applicant provide any responses they're inclined to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Zer. So if the applicant would like, or if the city has any comments to be able to address any of the issues, trail, traffic, runoff, etc., please, if you have any statements to make or any answers to any of the comments or concerns, we would entertain that at the moment, please.
Sure.
So I have a list here, so let me know if I've missed anything on this as I go through the list of what to respond to. So first item I have, I think was aimed more towards the city, but trail improvement. And I think the answer to that is to provide a trailhead, to make that improvement so there is an access point and that everybody in Raymore locally is able to utilize the trail system that's available. And so that is our proposed contribution to the trail system. The next item we have, I believe, is detention, which I believe was mentioned a few times. And I think I just want to make a statement that we still have to go through the preliminary final plat and site plan approval where all the engineering will be worked out. But I think generally speaking, just to give some color, is right now the site is a big hill. There's a big crest in the center of the site that just sheet drains all the water east. And so the creation of a detention facility catches that water and releases it slowly. And so obviously we'll go through and we will meet all the engineering standards around these. But the goal is to not only make it work for us, but to improve the overall detention standards. And I saw there was a question about the parking areas. Those will be designed specifically through grade to allow for all of the water to be caught and sent into the stormwater system. So again, it will all be worked out. We will meet all codes through the site plan approval process, but generally speaking, the detention system should vastly improve the water situation out there. The next item was headlights. So it's worth noting that this distance, east to west here, is well over 300 feet. I believe the required buffer is roughly 30 or so feet. And so our goal was to be tenfold what that requirement was. Additionally, we were planning to landscape all around the pond, to landscape up by the buildings, and then we do have buildings to protect any external light runoff. And so happy to work through this with engineering and staff to make sure that we are dead set on this, but it is my belief that due to topography, due to overall distance, due to landscaping, and due to physical blocks, whether it be trees or buildings, that there will be no headlight runoff as this property sits at a much different elevation than the rest of the east. The next one I have is on schools, and I've been working with staff to communicate many of these positions to them. But we are lucky enough to have a large portfolio of units all across both the Midwest, the West, and the Southeast. And the majority of those units hold the same exact mix as what we have here, which is a 40-50-10 of 1 beds, 2 beds, and 3 beds. And so I've asked that our research team pull out the data for us. As of right now, of Q1 2021, we show 0.07 minors per unit. Minors include anybody under the age of 18, and school-age children are considered between ages 6 and 18. While we don't ask that our residents disclose the exact age of all of their minors, just walking around and visiting the site, you can see it is heavily weighted towards 0 to 6. A lot of new families, a lot of young couples just getting started. So on a project size of 300 units, we can estimate that we will be less than 21 students based on our current portfolio. And that is spread across all ages of 0 to 18, again, heavily weighted on those children that are not in school yet. And the last question I had on my list here was, will this be a gated community? And so with every community, we take a look at it and we assess whether or not we will vehicularly gate the front of the property. We've looked at it here and we have not yet found a need, but we are happy to reconsider again and look at that to make sure that we have made the correct decision there and work with staff, commission, and council to make sure we're making the correct decision. I don't believe I missed any of the questions. So, anything else?
Will the property be monitored?
Yes, we have 24-hour security on site.
Mr. Krass, I would ask, do you have anything regarding engineering or anything regarding just stormwater runoff concerns?
Yes, just a couple of things I'd like to add. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing to inform the commission about is the gentleman that asked about the trail system improvements. Currently, we are under contract to construct a sidewalk along the new segment of Johnson Drive between Dean Avenue and Darby, so that will connect to the Fox Haven subdivision. Expect work to start on that later this summer. With regards to stormwater, what the residents have been describing is very similar to what was occurring before Lowe's, the Lowe's was constructed, and the detention system that the applicant is proposing is very similar to what was done at Lowe's. Lowe's put a detention pond in this southern portion of their site that intercepted a lot of the water that was running down the hill there and greatly improved the situation. So I have no doubt we'll be able to do and improve the situation with this development as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cataract, do you have anything to add to address any concerns?
I appreciate all the comments that came out. It is difficult sometimes to answer some of the questions simply because an actual rezoning application such as what was presented tonight, they actually gave us a lot more detail than you often would see with the rezoning by showing us the conceptual plan, by doing some of the studies they've already done. The city does not require the detailed engineering drawings through a rezoning application because typically there's a series of steps, and sometimes it sounds like we're putting that off to another meeting, but it's a logical progression of steps where it's a tremendous expense, obviously, to go forward, not only from the applicants but from the city to review the details when you're talking land use initially. Once the land use for the property is determined, then you get into the specifics of impacts on the utilities, on stormwater, on the overall development of the property. So we fortunately do have a system in place in Raymore where their next step is a preliminary plat, which is a public hearing. It requires another good neighbor meeting. And at the last good neighbor meeting, I know many of the residents that spoke tonight were there, and the discussion was that the engineering drawings come forward by the time we have the next good neighbor meeting. So some of the specific questions asked tonight will get addressed if the zoning gets approved before they make another next step. So it is a progression, and we hope there's patience in getting there. Again, and even when the site plan comes forward, it's not a public hearing, but the very specific details are addressed at that level, and staff is always putting the information out for residents to be able to look at these plans before even the Planning Commission sees them, to get that assurance that these issues are being addressed. So I'd just like to point that out as far as the steps of the process.
Thank you. Mr. Zer, you're gathering my attention.
Yes, thank you. Just piggybacking on what Mr. Cataract was saying, from legal's perspective and background, obviously you're looking at this from a rezoning perspective, not necessarily, hey, what's the exact detail going to be on the property? And again, referencing what Mr. Cataract had indicated, for rezoning purposes, as you weigh the evidence that's been presented this evening, the legal side of this for rezoning is utilization of the property at the highest and best use. At this time, you're looking at property that has not developed in at least 16 years under its current zoning designation. Take that into consideration when you all review and factor in your staff proposed findings of fact for your determination this evening.
Thank you for that reminder, sir. At this moment, I will close the public hearing since comments have been made and hopefully addressed, which will bring us to Commissioner, opportunity for Commissioner comments, questions, etc. And Mr. Key, I saw you waving.
Yeah, this question for you, Jim. I know you talk about, and we've talked about, when we look at Raymore and the area zone commercial and how limited we are in that regard and how careful we want to be with that. I'm curious if we've looked at other cities that have had similar layouts to us, that had maybe had similar issues with filling this type of commercial area that may be rezoned to this, or what, if anything, actually went in from a commercial standpoint to kind of fill that type of this type of zoned area.
We have, in just general in the planning world, when you get to what's classified here as a third-tier commercial property, again, you're not going to get the big box. You're not going to get any national retailers on a property that's this far off the highway and not visible whatsoever. The best we would hope for this scenario, under current trends, initially I had mentioned there was some discussion of office layout. which would have been ideal, and that was the initial plan. But we know how that world has been upended and changed over time. We have office buildings currently in the city that are sitting vacant. It's just very difficult to get tenants, and nobody has come forward for many, many years to build an office building. So that use really isn't looked at for the property. So really what's left, honestly, as we look at it, I'm surprised nobody came forward, honestly, is storage. Because storage facilities are a growing industry. We've seen it in Raymore. We've seen it, on 58 Highway. We've seen it storage for vehicles. For what we don't have is climate-controlled storage, but we haven't had an interest for that on this property. Those facilities even want more visible properties. So in at least in today's world, for the last several years, that's really the only use that we believe would have an interest on the property, and I don't think that's something that the city would be interested in on this location. So I hope that answers your question.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
So, Jim, we've also, just in my time that I've been mayor here for the last 5 years, we've also had other interest in that property from multifamily developers, but it didn't work out because we as a city and as a staff saw that as a potential problem project. It's only on this potential occasion, and maybe I'm just making a statement rather than a question, that this potential project holds a lot of more attractiveness with regard to the use of that land and to the general population here in Raymore and surrounding areas for its use, because you guys generally don't bring to this commission projects that receive any kind of media attention. We handle a lot of things in-house and don't come here. That's why this project is coming before the commission tonight, is that staff has seen it as an attractive use of this property and bringing this rezoning project forward.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the city has had other developers looking for multifamily on the property, and I think that gets lost by the community a lot. The statement you made is we seem to approve everything that comes forward. There's a lot of projects that don't even get to this point, where not that staff is trying to control what happens with the development, but we've been around long enough to understand council's direction under the strategic plan, the planning commission's direction that they've given. And there are uses, the multifamily uses before this project were not Class A luxury apartments. There were other types of multifamily which have a place in the community. But in this location, close to Timber Trails, Fox Haven, and the commercial area, we wanted a high-end, if it's going to be apartments, we wanted a high-end Class A apartment community, and that's what you're seeing come forward this evening, which is why staff, again, it's not easy to let go of commercial land. There's a limited amount of commercial land, but this is not viable commercial land in the city. We have better commercial land that's sitting undeveloped that we're trying to market, and that's our priority. But we also know we need rooftops, and we need all types of housing, and this meets another need for our community. Again, why we are supporting this request.
Additional questions, comments, discussion from the commission?
Chairman, if I could, I'd go ahead and make a motion.
Any final comments? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion from Commissioner Urquilla.
Commissioner, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact and forward case number 21015. They're requesting to rezone approximately 21.03 acres from an existing C3 regional commercial district to R3B. Apartment community residential district to allow for an apartment community with residential amenities to City Council with a recommendation of approval.
I would second that.
I don't think I have anywhere near enough paper to write all that down, Commissioner Urquilla, but that was very good. Thank you.
Do you want
Oh, you literally just I like that. Ingenious. So just rewording what the city provided. Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Urquilla, second by the mayor to accept The staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 21015, requesting to rezone approximately 21.03 acres from the existing C3 Regional Commercial District to R3B Apartment Community Residential District to allow for an apartment community with residential amenities to City Council with a recommendation of approval. Is that close enough?
Seems about spot on, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the assistance, Vice Chair Pfizer. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor.
If I could, so we've used the terminology highest and best use quite a bit tonight, and I've looked at the property myself, and I can't see how it could be any more marketed as a commercial piece of property or even single family. And so that's probably the reason I'm going to be voting in favor of this motion tonight, is that I believe the product is good for this rezoning application.
Any more discussion? If not, all members in favor? Seeing all 8 hands up, the motion passes 8-0. That will take us out of our new business and take us into our City Council report. Mr. Zer, will you be providing that to us this evening?
Yes, Chairman Wiggins. I'm happy to be able to do so this evening. Since your last meeting, the City Council has had some I'm not going to call them odd, but off-schedule meetings. The first meeting that I'm going to provide information on this evening is June 21st, 2021. At that meeting, there were 2 items of unfinished business read for a second time, which came originally before the Planning and Zoning Commission on the 18th of May. Previously, the Planning and Zoning Commission had approved these both by unanimous votes. The first one was the Prairie at Carroll Farms rezoning. This was rezoning designation from A District and R1 Single Family Residential District to R1P Single Family Residential Planned District. That received its first vote for approval on June 14th, 2021 by the City Council by a vote of 7-0, and was again approved by a unanimous number of the members present at the City Council at the June 21st meeting. Similarly, and as companion case to that, the Prairie at Carroll Farms preliminary plat was also previewed and approved. City Council had postponed it until the June 21st, 2021 meeting, but the Planning and Zoning Commission did have its opportunity to review it in May of 2021, approving it unanimously by the Commission. You might recall this involves a 312-lot single-family subdivision proposed for 145-plus acres located west of Kurzweil Road and north of 58 Highway. Again, City Council reviewed and approved that by a unanimous vote of the members present. That would take care of the June 21st City Council meeting. The next one was a special meeting of the City Council that met on June 28th, 2021. At that time, the Council did interviews and allowed for applicants to come forward for its consideration to fill the vacant spot for Ward 1 left by Councilman Dale Jacobson, who recently resigned his position. At the conclusion of that meeting, the Council has identified Victoria Scherzer to fill that vacant spot or that vacancy, and with any luck, she will be sworn in at the next council meeting. That would conclude the City Council report. I'm happy to provide any additional answers to questions the Commission might have, and as always, welcome the input from Mr. Caderet, Mr. Crass, and Mayor Turnbow if there is anything that I might have missed.
All right, no additions. Then I will turn it over. Mr. Caderet, do you have a staff report for us, sir?
Thank you, sir. Looking at the calendar for upcoming meetings, next Monday, July 12th for City Council is when they'll consider the rezoning and the preliminary plat for the Saddlebrook subdivision, a case you heard back in at your June 15th meeting. On July 20th, 2 weeks from tonight, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. In your packet, we had the annual review of the Unified Development Code. We will move that to the August meeting of the Commission because that evening we have a public hearing scheduled for the Sendera subdivision. This is on property that was previously referred to as the Estates of the Good Ranch, so down on Humock Hill Road, part of the Good Ranch community. Summit Custom Homes is looking to purchase all of that property, and they're proposing to change the name of the subdivision to Sendera. which does, and their proposal would be to reclassify the zoning to a planned unit development district. It would be a single-family subdivision, but they would have different phases within the subdivision for different products, different price points. So they'll be bringing forward that to the commission on the 20th. And then July 26th, City Council would be the first reading of the rezoning that you just recommended, the watermark proposal. So Council will have a public hearing on the matter on July 26th. That is currently what we have scheduled, and that will conclude staff report.
Thank you, sir. And like you said, that is a public hearing, so hopefully everybody on the 20th is able to attend so we can take care of business. The public seems to have left the chamber, but if there are any final comments from the public, we do welcome them at this time. Seeing nobody, we will move into commission member comments. I feel like I started at my right last time. Mayor, I always like to leave you kind of the end if you don't mind.
Sure. No, I'll go first.
But go ahead, please.
So there was a term used here tonight of rubber stamping, and that was my question or comment at the end after motions were made, is that this commission has never rubber stamped anything. This group has a diverse look at every subject that comes before it, and so to accuse us of rubber stamping was almost a travesty. I don't want to put it like that because I know she was well-meaning, but I want to reassure people that that's not the case at all, that there's a lot of studying that goes into it. There's a lot of pre-work done by the staff before it even makes it to this group. So I want to reassure people that rubber stamping is far from the truth as to how we approve and disapprove things that come before us. And I just want to say that to the group here, that I think you guys do a great job of sorting through everything. And I appreciate your work, and I appreciate staff. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Urquilla.
Yeah, I just want to comment tonight about how much you guys know I hate the traffic on 58. I think I've been pretty vocal about that. And I know it kind of may seem a little counterintuitive at this point, but my thought process has kind of become, if we're going to kind of get that, we have to show even more need as we move along. And I believe that by adding more pressure to those systems, that eventually something will have to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of where my thought process has gone. But I also do believe that this is a phenomenal opportunity that the city has uncovered and brought to us. I think this is exactly kind of what kind of fits where we're talking about. I was excited to see it tonight. It was a pleasant surprise in my packet because I don't think I was expecting it. But as always, I appreciate all the hard work you guys put into it. Jim, it's nice to see you getting more and more proactive in your presentations, answering my questions before I have to ask them and before you know it's going to come up. So I appreciate that immensely.
Thank you, Commissioner Urquilla. Commissioner Inkert, sir.
Just want to tell the staff thank you. It's a real eye-opener for me to see the background and the effort that you put into this and somehow managed to put this together in an hour and 45 minutes of our time to do that. I don't know, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of teamwork that goes on to make that happen, and I'd sincerely like to pass my appreciation on to your fine efforts.
Vice Chair Fizer.
Well, I would just like to echo everything that everyone has said already. I think this is a great project. I think that the public, I kind of wish they'd stuck around so we could say, thanks for showing up, because it is really nice when people show up and give their opinions. And I feel like they actually brought a lot of really valid points. I think, I understand their concerns about the stormwater runoff, and I think, that's very valid. I don't think we want to bring in new projects to the detriment of people who already live here, and I don't think we're doing that. But I think they brought up some good points that we can look at when it does come back with the site plan. So I do appreciate that. And I just think I must be the most patient driver in the world, because I don't really think that there's a big traffic problem here. I mean, I leave like at 7 every day, and I come home at 5, and it's like, you know, maybe 10 minutes on 58 Highway. I mean, I don't live too far from it, but it's like, it really just isn't that bad. It's like, I wonder if people have ever driven in a city before sometimes. But anyway, I have no complaints about the traffic. Unless there's an accident, then it's a mess. But otherwise, it's fine.
Commissioner Faulkner, sir.
First, I want to thank all of city staff. As usual, I think all 4 of you added a lot to the meeting this evening. We'll see Ms. Jordan's contribution later. I found the speaker's comments kind of prodded my memory during the public hearing. I believe she was talking about 152 Highway and Liberty, and I'm not necessarily out in traffic during those hours, but I do notice how much more difficult it is for me to make a left turn onto 58 Highway, and you know, kind of coming out of COVID, I can see the traffic getting back to more or less what I would call normal. Most all of my decisions are based on quite a few decades of experience, mostly living in Missouri, observation, not only in Missouri, but also in New England, California, other places that I've traveled on business, and I'm looking at traffic circles and roundabouts and, you know, looking at traffic there as well. And the speaker's comments about Raymore looking a little bit too much like Liberty took me back probably close to 40 years to visiting a friend who lived over in Olathe, and to get there you had to go across 135th Street, I believe, west, around the I-35 area, and a lot of commercial there, and it was a nightmare. I don't go over there much these days, but that's one of my nightmares that I would like never to see Raymore turn into. And of course, you know, as we look at those stacked stoplights down toward Raymore Walmart and so forth, and the traffic flowing up from Lucy Webb, it is definitely a concern. And a lot of those things are much harder to fix later if you don't see them coming and act proactively. So I did appreciate those comments, and again, thank you to city staff.
Thank you. Secretary Peterman?
I didn't know we had a traffic problem. Takes me a minute to go from my bedroom to my office, so. Anyway, very educational session tonight. Appreciate the staff's hard work on this one. I'm sure it's a pretty big deal. Taking some land that's pretty much non-usable to bring something forward that's going to be good for the city. That's why I supported it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Manser, Commissioner Manser.
Yeah, kind of, as the mayor said, it's not easy to get into this room. You know, you guys have really created kind of an environment where the applicants understand the expectations put in front of us. So I think that's great. I think you guys showed tremendous diligence in especially this case, because you knew you had to. This, I believe, is the best use for this piece of property. And I think that with that, you know, the rule of economics will come in and maybe make our existing commercial zones more attractive to developers. Other than that, thank you so much. Thank you to the public. I know they're no longer here, but always love hearing from them. And it seems like we've got an applicant that will really work with the public feedback as well as the staff feedback
to give us a product that really fits our community, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Kind of dittos to everybody. Obviously, thank you to staff for all your hard work. Obviously, that the public is no longer here, but just for anybody that happens to read this or to see this, read the minutes, whatever. You know, the body up here represents all wards of our community. We are not all from one part of town or another, so we do have 2 members that do live in Ward 1 where this will be located, so it affects them in their backyard. So this is, you know, this is a diverse group of personal and professional backgrounds and ages and races and sexes, and you know, we do take all this seriously, and we ultimately want all of this to be in the best interest of Raymore, and I think this is the highest and best use for the property. It's also tax revenue that's coming into town, revenue that's going to our schools, into our fire district, into our police, our libraries, etc. So I will end it there and thank everybody for your attendance tonight, and thank you for the public that have now departed for your comments. We do appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a wonderful, safe evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Our meeting, a motion
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Chairman, if I could.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Akia, second by Commissioner Ingert. I guess we should formally adjourn this meeting. All those in favor? Seeing all the hands, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.